never be intimidated by the fact that you're going up against a really strong player, because you will always have the chance to win. And so we see our players, they are seated right now, getting ready for their next rounds. We are just going to pull up the team leads very shortly. And while we're waiting for the players, let's have a think about which player are you going to root for?
I think, do you know what? I'm going to root for Mateus in this match. Of course, we will be completely unbiased. We're rooting for both trainers. And as much as Marco is a fantastic trainer and one that I'm sure will give us a little bit of a masterclass of VGC, it's always nice to see these new players coming into the fold and seeing how they're approaching the game and what they're thinking during this match. So I've got a little bit of a quiet rooting for the underdog here.
I have to say, if Mateus does manage to beat Marco, he will get the bounty. So that is something that will be really fun to watch. But yeah, really, without seeing how the match goes, right, and without the match having started, of course, there's no way to know. But both players have an equal chance of winning, so this will be an incredibly exciting match. And I think both players looking very focused right now, just knowing that this is round 3. A win will put them in a really good standing for the rest of the day.
Right, getting those 7 wins does lock in your place into day 2. And Mateus there, the Bochum regional, managing to get top 32. So a good result, and certainly if this is early doors for Mateus's VGC career, definitely an accolade to be very, very proud of. Bochum was a tournament with over 600 over 500 players, I correct myself.
Yeah, which is huge. That's
massive.
Like bigger than some internats from previous years. So that is not a tournament you should scoff at. And Europe is a very, very strong region, historically. So getting top 32, very,
very impressive. And I remember there, Marco, we said, was the Oceania International Champion, of course. And I remember playing Marco actually in the top 4 of the Jönköping Regional Championships back in 2019. Unfortunately, for me at least, Marco was victorious, and it was a very, very tight set. And one of the first times that I actually saw Marco play the game. We are seeing Mateus really enjoying being on the stage there, and the team on the 4. So Goldigo, Amoongus, Arcanine, Palafin, Chien-Pao and Dragonite, the first Palafin to be seen on stream so far. Look at him go, he's having a great time.
I think you manifested that Palafin earlier when you were talking about it, because we do finally get to see it on stream, and I'm very happy to see a Chien-Pao. That is my favorite sort of Bruin. So that's really looking at the team now. So there's multi-skills, a very bulky Dragonite coming out, extreme speed, Terra Blast, Terra Flying. So a bit different, but I think a lot of Dragonites seem to, in this format at least, seem to split between Terra normal extreme speed and Terra Blast, Terra Flying. So yeah, this Dragonite in this case is a Terra Flying, so it will be doing a lot of damage if it chooses to go for it. And I think Marco's team is just coming out on the screen right now. Yes,
it is indeed. We've got the Fluttermane King Gambit, GU Iron Bundle, Great Tusk and Talonflame. And Talonflame's a Pokemon we saw, especially in Regulation Set A, so it's nice to see Marco favouring it coming into this event. And it looks like he's running a little bit of a similar composition to Barish in the last round, just without that Torkoal there, kind of dropping it for the Chi-Yu instead, a little bit more consistent. Nice to see the opportunity to get the Sunnies on that Talonflame, though, with that sunny day. So you can activate the photosynthesis of both Great Tusk and Fluttermane, but also you can power up that Chi-Yu.
Yeah, well, Sunny Day is actually not a move that's really commonly seen on Talonflame. It's quite commonly seen on Murkrow these days, but Talonflame and Great Tusk make a fantastic pairing. Just being able to get that priority Tailwind up if its Gale Winds is active, and Talonflame being a flying type is just naturally immune to all the earthquakes that the Great Tusk can throw out. So it's a really offensive pairing. Like if you lead and there's not much that resist ground types in this format. A lot of Pokemon then go for Terra Flying to try and dodge those super effective or just really strong ground type moves.
Especially those Great Tusks coming out. When you see it and you haven't prepared for it, it's definitely a Pokemon that can cause a lot of problems. Now we have a little bit of an opportunity to show your support for these trainers. Mateus on the left, Marco on the right. Drop it in chat if you're watching live here, who you are supporting in this round and who you think is going to be taking the victory in round 3.
Yes, I think, you know what, Ben, I think I'm going to join you in trying to support for the underdog, but, good luck to both players. I think this is going to be a fantastic match. Just looking at the team matchups, it seems very, very equally, very equal between the two. You know, there's a choice specs Fluttermane on Marco's side, and that's going to be dealing a lot of damage. And you also got Qian Pao and Dragonite, and that's a really, really powerful combination.
The combination I'm looking out for is that Arcanine and either Palafin or Dragonite on Mateus' side of the field. The Howl on Arcanine is a move that we haven't really seen until Regulation Set B and C coming into VGC. Usually these moves don't tend to find play, but it's really become much more popular, especially with the Terra mechanic just compounding all of those boosts that you can get, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if Dragonite can make use of that. So Arcanine goes first, gets the Howl off, raises the Dragonite's attack, maybe nullifies and Intimidate coming out from Marco's side of the field, and then is able to dish out massive, massive damage.
Yes, Mateus' Palafin also has Substitute over Haze, and we have seen Haze on Palafin drop off a little bit. It's really interesting because Substitute doesn't, if your Pokemon is already behind a Substitute, the Howl from your partner actually doesn't raise its attack. So if this Arcanine is trained to be faster than the Palafin, then it can Howl first, let the Palafin get an attack boost, and then the Palafin goes behind the Substitute, and that could be really, really scary. So I'm sure Mateus has thought about this during the team building, so I wonder if we'll get to see that on stream.
Well, one of the biggest challenges that Mateus has, and Marco will be able to use in expert fashion, I think, will be that Iron Bundle, but it's not going to be coming out in the lead of game 1 of the round 3 Malmö Regional Championships. Instead, we have Fluttermane and Chi-Yu, a staple combination coming out from Marco, and Golden Go and Palafin leading the way for Mateus.
Yes, so this Golden Go is looking quite threatened right now. It's going to be taking super effective hits from both the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu if it does not go into the Terra. The Palafin is, you know, leading with the Palafin just in case that Mateus is probably going to want to be switching it out quite soon. We don't know if he's going to switch it out this turn or, you know, go for Protect, just scout out and then switch it out. But once that Palafin comes back in, it's going to be dealing heavy, heavy damage.
Going 0 to hero will be a massive boon for Mateus. As we see an early Terra coming out, it looks like it's Marco committing to Terra right on turn 1 here. It will be that Terra Fairy, of course, that we saw coming in the open team sheet. That Fluttermane's going to be doing a lot more damage. Golden Go going for the Protect, keeping itself safe from these two very offensive threats on Marco's side of the field, and a Dazzling Gleam following up from that Fluttermane, going to be doing a lot of damage from that Palafin that is not going for the Protect this turn. Oh my god!
No.
This is a one-hit knockout on the Palafin. It doesn't even get to switch out, switch back in. It's going to be knocked out first turn, and a follow-up into the Protect from the Heat Wave. That Chi-Yu could have maybe finished the Palafin off if it survived on just a few hit points, but now Mateus is going to have to bring another Pokemon in. It will be that Qian Pao, and going to have to find a way to get through Mateus' team with only 3 Pokemon left intact.
Oh, that was such a strong attack coming from that Fluttermane, you know, choice specs, and then Terra Fairy on top of that, and coming off Fluttermane, which is naturally really, really heavily offensive on the special side, with the Chi-Yu, in fact. And that poor Palafin just did not stand a chance. But of course, now that Qian Pao is on the field, its ability is not going to be helping its partner Golden Go. And in actual fact, I think none of the Pokemon on the field besides Qian Pao itself will be benefiting from that sort of Ruin ability. But that's something that Mateus can be dealing really heavy damage to Fluttermane, which is not so defensive on the physical side.
No, certainly not. Nor is that Chi-Yu really, but it does carry a Focus Sash, and so Marco's sitting in a pretty favourable position. We know that the Fluttermane is locked into that Dazzling Gleam, so this Terra Water coming out from the Golden Go will make it take a little bit more damage from that Dazzling Gleam, but more importantly, as well as the Qian Pao going for the Protect, will allow it to take that Heat Wave much, much better. You have to balance those things when you go for a Terra and take as little damage as you can. Dazzling Gleam coming out, of course, from that Fluttermane is going to do massive damage. Oh my god, who needs the Photosynthesis boost? This Fluttermane is absolutely going crazy in this match, and the Heat Wave is enough to not pick up the knockout. Make It Rain is going to pick up the knockout in reply on that Fluttermane, and it's 3 Pokemon apiece.
Yes, a critical hit on that Fluttermane probably not mattering very much. I don't think that Fluttermane would have survived with Make It Rain, but that Golden Go is so heavily damaged. But, you know, the Terra option from Marco's side is now gone. Of course, the Terra option on Mateus' side is also just, Golden Go is very, very low on health. So both Pokemon are quite chipped, and Marco is going to be bringing in his third Pokemon, which is going to be an Iron Bundle.
That is something that this Chen Pao really doesn't want to see, of course, with that booster energy coming out, activating Iron Bundle's Quark Drive ability, and I believe that was a speed boost that
yes.
I just saw, just to double check before I say the next thing, because that Chen Pao is not going to be as fast as the Iron Bundle, and there is an Icy Wind there. The
yes.
game plan there, I think, for Mateus in the last turn was to get that Golden Go to do a little bit of chip damage to that Chi-Yu so that Sacred Sword would be able to finish it off, and maybe the Golden Go would be able to do a little bit more later on. But now that Chen Pao is under threat because an Icy Wind and a Heat Wave follow-up is probably going to be able to take a double KO unless Mateus does something about it.
Yes. So the Dragonite is going to switch in. Mateus is just recognizing that maybe the Chen Pao is not the best system, but a super effective Icy Wind coming out onto that Dragonite with the multi-scale, and that did so much damage. Icy Wind isn't really a move you use and expect to be dealing heavy damage because it's more of a supportive move, but Golden Go getting knocked out from two not very effective moves. So Chi-Yu just really helping, and the Dragonite is now just so heavily chipped from taking it. Like, thanks to the multi-scale, it was able to switch in and survive this turn, but it is in very, very low health. But, you know, it can get an extreme speed off before anything else can hit it.
It certainly can, but that might be a little bit difficult for Extreme Speed to be able to knock out Iron Bundle or Chi-Yu in this position. Chen Pao coming back onto the field is going to help with that, of course, with its Sword of Ruin ability, dropping the defense of everything, including that Dragonite, but not going to be important in front of two special attackers, or two typically special attackers that we see on Marco's side of the field. Feel this Extreme Speed going into the Iron Bundle is the move that you've got to play. In combination with that Sucker Punch is enough to take the KO, though, so no Icy Winds coming out from this Iron Bundle whatsoever, but the Dark Pulse going to be a follow-up, and it is going to take the KO onto the Dragonite with a critical hit. Not sure that the critical hit was necessary there.
Don't think that mattered there. So now Mateus is down to his last Pokemon in Chen Pao, whereas Marco's still got two more Pokemon left, both relatively Great Tusk at full health, and Chi-Yu still relatively healthy. I think the Great Tusk is a Life Orb variant, and the Chi-Yu has had its Focus Sash broken. So Chen Pao, because there was no Icy Wind in that previous turn, it can go for a Sacred Sword onto that Chi-Yu, and I think at this range it should knock it out, but then you still have to deal with the Great Tusk, which has great physical defenses. So
it really does, but also moves that drop those defenses. The Protect comes out from the Chen Pao. I'd really like to see, there it is, the Protect coming out from Marco's Chi-Yu, just scouting out, trying to take advantage of the moves, not use moves like Headlong Rush or Close Combat into that Chen Pao and drop its defenses, because an Ice Spinner coming out from that Chen Pao would do a lot of damage. Now, Marco's actually in quite a difficult position. This Chen Pao does have a Focus Sash, and so the Chi-Yu will get knocked out by a Sacred Sword if it does connect and there's no double Protect going on from Marco's side of the field. And then maybe the Great Tusk can get knocked out by Mateus' Chen Pao.
Yes, and the Chi-Yu does get knocked out from that Sacred Sword, so it is now a Focus Sash Chen Pao versus a Great Tusk. And Marco quite wisely going for an Earthquake, just recognizing that maybe the Chi-Yu is not going to survive this turn and not wanting to reduce the the defense of his own Great Tusk. Now, this Ice Spinner coming out, is that enough to knock out the Great Tusk?
Oh.
It does not! No.
We're going to get one of those rare 0-0 victories here for Marco taking the first game of this round, as the Earthquake, of course, is enough to do 2 hit points of damage to that Chen Pao, and the Life Orb is going to knock it out. What a game, what an ending, and something I really wouldn't have expected from the early games where Marco did so well turn 1. But Mateus nearly turned it all around.
Yeah, he pulled it back really well. There was at one point where I think he was down to his last 2 Pokemon, and Marco still had 3 fairly healthy Pokemon left. So really good job of Mateus, just recognizing his win condition, withdrawing his Chen Pao, just preserving that Focus Sash, knowing that he will need it to deal with Marco's last Pokemon. And actually, one really interesting thing I wanted to mention is the fact that both the Great Tusk fainted to Life Orb. And so it was a 0-0 win, but Marco won because the way game mechanics goes is that the first Pokemon to faint is actually the side that loses. So even though at the end of the turn both Pokemon fainted, it was because the Chien Pao fainted first.
Yeah, and it doesn't end up as a draw like you may be expecting if you haven't played as much VGC and you're new coming in watching these two great players duke it out against each other. Going into Game 2, what do you think, Zoe, that's going to be the best adjustment for Mateus to make?
I think when Mateus led with his Golden Go and the Palafin, yes, in that Game 1, he lost his Palafin really early on. Maybe he was banking on the Palafin surviving the turn, and then because I think we did see him click Wave Crash into the Chi-Yu, but unfortunately it got knocked out by that Flutter Mane before it could do anything. So I think preserving that Palafin is really, really important because Flutter Mane is choice locked, so it cannot protect. And so once the Palafin switches back into the field in that hero form, when it's paired with that Chien Pao, there's a very high chance it can actually just knock out that Flutter Mane before the Flutter Mane can even move. And a lot of Pokemon on Marco's side actually just can't really handle the Palafin very well. So that's an adjustment I could see Mateus making.
Definitely, and the question is if Mateus does make those sort of adjustments and Marco doesn't, we'll see a very interesting game, and certainly I think a very different game to Game 1. But the question is now, what if Marco does switch it up? Flutter Mane and Chi-Yu, sometimes you got to look at these games and say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that game was really close in the end game, even though from turn 1, Mateus only had 3 Pokemon. And Marco's probably, given that he's a player with a lot of experience, will be thinking, hang on a second, like I got off to a great start here, but actually, do I need to make sure that I've got the tools that I need in the mid game and the late game to make that a little bit less close?
Yes, I don't know if that was a damage roll in that last game with the Ice Spin or just taking that Great Tusk down to the red. Now we are going to see complete new switch up, an Iron Bundle and King Gambit on Marco's side, and a little bit of a switch up. Golden Go still there, but Chien Pao instead as the lead.
Yeah, this is a really different direction for Marco to be taking in this match. Leading out with that Iron Bundle makes it more likely that Marco's trying to get some speed control going. That King Gambit, I believe I did see the King Gambit was holding Assurance, holding the Assurance move, had learned the Assurance move maybe. And so follow up from an Icy Wind, that Assurance becomes very, very powerful. So a different way to do damage, and certainly one that wouldn't mind whether the Golden Go went for the Terror or didn't in this game. Of course, it does have to worry about that Sacred Sword coming out from the Chien Pao, as does the Iron Bundle, but Chien Pao can only target one thing at a time, right? And so it all comes down now to how both of these trainers protect the Pokemon that are on their side of the field, and also who they attack into.
Yes, that Iron Bundle on Marco's side going for the Protect just to scout out what Mateus is planning on. Golden Go also going for the Protect, so just keeping itself safe, maybe a little bit scared of that King Gambit. Sacred Sword comes out, but it goes into the Protect, so Marco very boldly leaving his King Gambit on the field against a super attack that could hit it for super effective damage. But the King Gambit attack does go off into the Golden Go, so not much of a change in the board state, but of course now the Golden Go and the Iron Bundle have both used the Protect, so they are unlikely to go for a Protect this turn.
No, and that really does change the board state between these two trainers, knowing what has Protect and what isn't likely, or what has protected and isn't likely to protect in this turn. And that changes the dynamic. It's really up to these players to make a little bit of a read here about how their opponent reacts. That Iron Bundle or King Gambit could certainly switch out into a Flutter Mane. If Mateus fears that Golden Go isn't likely to go for a Protect, and therefore could go for a Make It Rain in this position, which opens it up to Assurance and and those other moves. So there's a lot of a cycle going around of like, that knocks out that knocks out that, knocks out that. We'll have to see after this terrestrialization if there is indeed one of those explosive turns coming up.
Oh yes, so the Golden Go going for a Terra Water, just keeping itself safe from any super effective Dark-type moves that could be coming out from this King Gambit. Of course, it is now going to be weak to a Freeze Dry if the Iron Bundle goes for it, but Marco also responding with a Terror. This looks like it's on the King Gambit, so just wanting to keep itself safe from any super effective Sacred Swords that's coming its way.
Yeah, going from 4 times effective to 2 times resisted is quite a lot less less damage on balance. That Chien-Pao going for a protect, so trying to not take any damage this turn. Icy Wind coming out, of course, from the Iron Bundle, what we would be certainly expecting in this position to try and further Marco's speed control, get that King Gambit maybe faster than this Golden Go now that the Golden Go has his speed drop. That's exactly what we're seeing. The Assurance doesn't pick up the KO. Oh my.
Oh, but the Iron Bundle is going to get knocked out for all of its trouble. So, I don't know, I think Mateus is probably, you know, looking pretty happy that the Iron Bundle is gone from the field. And, I mean, there is a fairly scary floating King Gambit.
it's one of the problems that you face when playing against a Chien-Pao. Its coverage is so good. It's like, hey, I'm quad weak to fighting. Now I'm going to change into a flying type to deal with that. But oh, whoops, I became weak to ice instead.
Yeah, I think due to the King Gambit's natural bulk, it probably can survive any ice spinners from the Chien-Pao for one turn at least. So, you know, Marco could be capitalizing on that. But Flutter Mane is going to be coming out, and this is a choice spec Flutter Mane that gave Mateus so much trouble in that last game, and it could possibly just give even more trouble to Mateus this game as well.
It certainly could, and that Dazzling Gleam was a very big threat to Mateus in the last game. I'm sure Marco will be using that to his advantage. Of course, it can go straight, it cannot go for the Terror this game, of course, because that King Gambit on Marco's side of the field has already committed the Terror instead, and so this Flutter Mane will remain partly a Ghost type and not have the damage boost that affords from Terra Fairy. But it doesn't need to do that much damage. That Golden Go is already so low. Chien-Pao isn't a Pokemon that's known for being able to take too many attacks. That's why it carries a Focus Sash, and combined with a Sucker Punch is probably going to cause it to be fainting this turn.
And Ice Spinner coming up from the King Gambit, but it's not enough to knock it out, allowing the Flutter Mane to go for a Dazzling Gleam and take a double knockout this turn. So very good play from Marco, just trying to break that Focus Sash on the Chien-Pao there. And now Mateus is down to his final... Oh, no, he's got two more Pokemon left. Sorry, got that mixed up. It was Marco's Pokemon that fainted.
Marco's Pokemon that are... been switching around in this game, and Mateus yet to do so. But we'll have to see how this Arcanine, as well as the other Pokemon in the back for Mateus, this Dragonite, I'm quite excited to see actually, I'm not going to lie, will be faring. The Flutter Mane has locked into Dazzling Gleam in this situation, and the Dragonite's certainly weak to it, but without the Iron Bundle on the field, this Dragonite is looking like it's in much more of a prime position.
Yes, although because both players have used their Terror, this Dragonite is unable to go for the Terror Flying to dodge that super effective Dazzling Gleam. So a play that, you know, Marco could make is to try and break that the multi-scale, and then the Flutter with Sucker Punch, and then the Flutter Mane going for a Dazzling Gleam, which would pick up the knockout. But if Dragonite goes for the extreme speed, the Sucker Punch would fail. Exactly,
that's one of the decisions that Mateus is going to have to make going into this turn. One that he did in fact make with the extreme speed. Going into King Gambit is easily enough to pick up the knockout now that King Gambit is no longer a Steel type, nor is that Chien-Pao left on the field boosting up the damage. Dazzling Gleam coming out from the Flutter Mane, doing actually pretty respectable damage to the Arcanine.
Oh, it's a
and
critical
hit. Doing a lot of damage to that Dragonite and breaking the multi-scale. Flare Blitz going into the Flutter Mane is not enough to pick up the KO, something that's pretty common here. Arcanine not usually able to do so, but with that Ghost typing, that Dragonite is no longer going to be able to use the extreme speed to knock out that Flutter Mane.
I wonder how much damage that extreme speed would do to the Chi-Yu, because the Flutter Mane, because it's a Ghost type, cannot be affected by the extreme speed, so it will be able to get one attack off. Now, it is heavily damaged, so another Flare Blitz from this Arcanine would knock it out, but Chi-Yu does have Dark Pulse, and you know, the Arcanine will probably survive a combination of Dazzling Gleam and Heat Wave, but but Chi-Yu protects this turn, just keeping itself safe and allowing its partner Flutter Mane to just take even more, deal even more damage this turn.
Probably going to be able to knock out that Dragonite now that that multi-scale is no longer in play. Dazzling Gleam as the follow-up is going to be able to take the knockout onto that Dragonite. Arcanine goes down to just about a quarter of its health and not feeling so good. Flare Blitz with its recoil is going to do probably a little bit more damage to that Arcanine. A critical hit. We've seen quite a lot of critical hits knocking out Pokemon from very low health ranges.
The ones that don't matter.
Absolutely. What you want to see, I think, in a really competitive format, but a cancellation there coming out from Mateus, and it is going to be Marco Silva taking round 3 of the Malmö Regional Championships.
Yes, very well played from both players. Marco, of course, a veteran of game, being really experienced and knowing how to position his Pokemon properly, which Pokemon to properly bring into the game that would best answer his opponents. But Mateus also doing really well. I think there were several points in the game where it looked really, really close. I think you could have swung either way during that game.
It was, and especially looking back at game 1, Marco took such an early lead, was able to get ahead in the game, was able to take the Pokemon advantage all the way through until the end, where the final 2 Pokemon on Mateus' side of the field said, hang on a second, we're going to even the playing field here and give you something to think about. So, really like the way that Mateus did dig in that game, but Marco just doing exactly what he needed to be able to clinch out the game, choosing most importantly to use Earthquake and not close combat or headlong rush in that end game that would have got the Ice Spinner KO.
That was a really, really smart play from Marco, just recognizing that, you know what, I think my Great Tusk is going to survive this Ice Spinner, because Great Tusk does have really, really good not special defense, physical defense.
Physical defense, yeah.
It has very poor special defense. But yeah, so I think Marco probably trained his Great Tusk to survive that Ice Spinner, which was why he was quite confident in going for that Earthquake, knowing, you know what, maybe I don't need the Chi-Yu this turn. It's okay, I can knock out my own Pokemon there.
Yeah, exactly, especially when, Mateus was scouting out the Protect with Chien-Pao in the end game, and the Chi-Yu did indeed protect. If the Chi-Yu went for an attack when Chien-Pao went for the Protect, let me just get this right, then the next turn, it would have been a little bit of a call as to what Pokemon was going to be attacking next, and that would have put Mateus in a bit of a tricky situation, but because of the way that Marco played it, there was an opportunity there that Mateus could take advantage of. Moving on to game 2, of course, less explosive from the start, especially with that turn 1 where no damage entered the field whatsoever, but just showing the bulk of that King Gambit and why that made such a difference to Marco's game plan.
Yeah, also actually really interesting I wanted to mention is Mateus's Goldengo, Goldengo, I should say, did not have any Ghost-type moves. It was Make a Rain, Thunderbolt, Nasty Plot, and Protect, which is quite an uncommon moveset because you really only see Thunderbolt on those choice specs, and that really helped Mateus in KOing that Iron Bundle without needing to go for the Make a Rain.
And sometimes you've got to weigh those decisions up. I mean, a lot of the time I think that Shadow Ball decision comes down to whether you want to hit Arcanine quite well, maybe Fluttermanes and Fluttermanes that have gone for a different terror to what maybe you would expect rather than Fairy, or some of those Pokemon like Chien-Pao that terrestrialize into the Ghost type and you want to hit them for super effective damage while they're trying to avoid something like a Fake Out. But yeah, it's a great team building choice, and we saw it do massive work in that match.
Yeah, because I actually, in my mind, I was so used to seeing Shadow Ball, I thought, oh, this Iron Bundle can probably survive whatever is being thrown at it, because Mateus did not go for a Make a Rain. I thought, oh, wait a minute, actually the Thunderbolt came out, so it is going to be going down that turn, because Iron Bundle is just not known for its special defense. But Marco being able to play, even though Mateus took an early knockout, because that Goldengo was critical in surviving Icy Wind and Assurance, and Marco lost one of his Pokemon really early on. He was able to come back from that and just position his way.
It's kind of the reverse of game 1 in many respects, where it was Mateus that managed to take the early advantage, and that put him in a position where the Fluttermane came in for free. Alongside that Sucker Punch was really important because those Focus Sashes stop a Pokemon getting knocked out, a Pokemon like Chien-Pao, of course, from getting knocked out in one. And then as soon as the Focus Sash gets broken, then that's when it turns into a little bit of crunch time, and certainly that Dazzling Gleam did so much work to forward Marco's position, and Mateus just then didn't have enough left in the tank to come back again.
Yeah, it's really interesting also that Marco's adjustment to that game to bringing the King Gambit over that Great Tusk. Maybe he thought that was just a little bit too close for liking. That 0-0, he won in the end, but quite barely, because that Life Orb recoil can be quite detrimental sometimes when you're making, like, that is something you have to take in mind when team building, is that if you have a Life Orb on your Pokemon, it will be taking a little fraction of its health each time it attacks, and that means that if you keep making your Pokemon attack, its time on the field is very, very limited.
It really is. It just turns all of those times where maybe you just live on a sliver and and then instead your Pokemon faints, which can definitely change your game plan. But the extra bit of damage that did, I think, would have been pretty useful, or will be pretty useful to Marco during the day, because if I remember rightly from some of those calculations in team building for Regulation B, and certainly a little bit in Regulation C, the Great Tusk does actually need that Life Orb to be able to knock out the most common of Iron Hands.
Yes.
And Iron Hands is a Pokemon that we've seen like rise up in usage and then maybe drop off a little bit and come back again. It's a Pokemon that's always been a sort of in the middle of the popularity for the usage charts, but it's such a good Pokemon to be able to knock out in one.
It's so scary as it's really, really bulky. Because it's so slow, most players just don't choose to train it in speed and just put an Assault Vest on it, and an Iron Hands with an Assault Vest, also sometimes supported by, say, an Arcanine or some other Intimidate user, it's really, really difficult to knock out in one hit.
Especially when you're playing Chi-Yu and Iron Bundle, which are both very naturally weak to Pokemon like Iron Hands. The choice to run Life Orb on those kind of sets on Great Tusk does really make sense, and it's an understanding of how Marco's team gets put together and how Marco wants to be playing and approaching the format.
Yeah, that Kingambit put in so much work in that last game. I think Assurance is a move that's really starting to rise in popularity. Early on in Regulation A, pretty much all Kingambits were Assault Vest set with the Sucker Punch and Kowtow Cleave, but now a lot of opponents are realizing, hey, this Kingambit's pretty slow. You know, you've got a lot of spread move options in this metagame. You've got Icy Wind, Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave. Why not just put Assurance and then double its damage output if that Pokemon takes damage? And also, a lot of Pokemon like Arcanine and Palafin going for Wave Crash and Flare Blitz. I think I said it the other way around. Arcanine does not do Wave Crash.
They're doing damage. They're doing damage without priority.
Yes, that when they go for a Flare Blitz or Wave Crash, that takes recoil. When an Assurance is used on that Pokemon, because they've taken damage that same turn, the Assurance will be doubled.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, following up, you know, with that and talking about a little bit about the moves that you can use with Assurance, Icy Wind is what we saw Marco use in that match, and that allowed Kingambit, which is so slow naturally, as we were talking about, to outspeed the Golden Go, which Golden Go is a Pokemon that's kind of like right in the middle, slap bang in the middle of how fast Pokemon are. And so you can train it to be really fast, or you can train it to be a little bit slower and take a little bit more damage, dish a little bit more damage out, or attack first. And so, you know, depending on how Mateus trained it versus another one of Marco's opponents later in the tournament, we'll have to see whether that impacts things. But it was really nice to see that combination of let's drop the opponent's speed, then hit them with Assurance.
Yes, I'm really curious as to how Mateus trained his Golden Go. Like, I think in the early game, we like in the meta game, I think most Golden Goes were quite bulky, and then they went all really speedy. And now I feel like the trend has been back to bulky again. Golden Go is a Pokemon that hasn't seen that much usage in Regulation C, but I think it's starting to rise again because there's just so much Flutter Mane around. And with a well-timed Terra, even though Golden Go, yes, it is slower than Flutter Mane and can take super effective damage, if you Terra at the correct time and if you manage your board position correctly, it is a really, really good check to Flutter Mane.
Make It Rain is quite a powerful move.
It is indeed.
I think we can definitely summarize it like this. But we're going to have to hear all about Marco's thoughts of that match and what he's going to be, you know, aiming for both in the tournament and later on in the series as we travel closer and closer towards the World Championships. Let's throw it over to our interview with the winner from your last round, Marco Silva.
Thank you so much, Ben. I'm here with your winner of round 3. It's Marco Silva. Marco, how are you feeling after that?
Yeah, I'm feeling really good, bro.
Yeah. Were you expecting the game to play out quite how it did?
Yeah, so like with this team against like these type of matchups, there's like a lot of moves I can do against. But the main thing is basically the lead and what type of Pokemon does he bring. So if he brings like Dragonite, I kind of have to play with Great Tusk in the late game, like I did in game 1. So I kind of wanted to scout it out. And yeah, like I think that specific version, like without Tinglu or like any other like fire type, like any other like a Silva's Pokemon with like a Terra Fire type. It's kind of, we can say, I mean, it's not easy, but like it's kind of easy to like determine like what you actually want to do, because like Fire Element Chiyu does always really well.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And another tech I saw on your team in the team preview was Sunny Day on that Talonflame. Is that a move that you click often?
Yeah, so like I mean, it's not necessarily like a really a move that I click often, but at the same time, there's like a lot of matchups that really helps you fix. So for example, against Palafin, like he had Palafin, but since he also had Dragonite, I kind of had to play around it and not play with like the Sunny Day version and with Greatas. But since Talonflame is a Pokemon that I don't really bring often, like I only basically bring it into like the mirror, like Hyper Offensive and some other matchup. I just decided to put like some specific moves that I knew that were going to be useful when I was supposed to bring the Talonflame.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. It's a really nice option to have available to you in the right matchup, but not quite that one. And if we look to that game that we just saw, seemed to me a little bit closer than perhaps you might have been expecting. How did you feel going into that game?
Yeah, so like after turn 1, I was like, okay, this is done. Like I killed Palafin, he didn't get any damage off, but then he basically played every turn correctly. I kind of knew what he was going for, but I wasn't really sure about the Goldengo like tanking Terradizing Gleam plus Heatwave, because usually it doesn't. But yeah, he just played really well. Also, I knew he was going for like a String Split plus Sucker Punch into my Iron Bundle, but I also knew it was a roll in the occasion. So I was like, if he doesn't get the roll, I just win. So it doesn't really make sense for me to predict that, because let's say like I protect and he just attack the other slot, I just risk to lose when I already know that he has to like get the turn right and also like get the roll. And also I kind of knew that Great Task was like, if he was Jolly with his Chempa, then later in the game it really was Jolly. Like I knew I was able to tank Ice Spinner because I play with this team a bunch. This is the same team that my brother used in the European International Championship, of course, with a little bit of like changes. But yeah, I kind of knew like a lot of calcs because I've been playing this team a lot.
Yeah, and that of course was the team that won the junior division of the EUIC for him. So a really offensive threat, that team. And so it's a team that you're really comfortable with. Is that something you feel is important going into today? A team you're comfortable with?
Yeah. So like, well, I was always been saying like to people when they tell me I don't really know like if I should use this team or like another one for this type of tournament. It might be not really a good call for the meta. I just say like, if you're really confident with a team, it doesn't really matter if it's like. It doesn't really matter if it's like a really good call, because it's better to just use a team you're confident with instead of like a team that, of course, you're not, but then it probably has like a good matchup into like the best teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think comfort is something that's really underrated, I think, playing. You can't just pick up any old team and suddenly expect to have great results, I don't think. So, you're currently undefeated here in Malmö. You came top 4 in Utrecht as well, and actually I was casting your semi-final match with Eric, all 3 of which games went to 20 minutes. It was the longest a game of Pokemon can be, whereas that match that we just saw was faster paced.
Yeah, so like I think was also like one of my stronger points when it comes to like doing, of course, a lot of tournaments, since yeah, like to compete to get like the day 2, you also have to do like basically every tournament in Europe, since there's also not that many compared to like the US. There's like 5 regionals plus the open. So yeah, you basically have to compete in all of them. So one of my strongest points is also like being able to switch up teams, even if they have like none we do with like each other. For example, of course, in Utrecht I used like a really solid team with Garganacl, Amungus, Iron Hands, and here I'm just playing Hyper Offensive with Chiyu and Starmie.
Do you have a style which you prefer?
Honestly, like when I started playing, I was always using like hard Trick Room, even if I basically never play a Trick Room, because Mimilax was like one of the strongest team, and I really like Mimilax. And also Hyper Offensive. So like I kind of picked up a balance more recently, because I just wanted to see like, because like I consider my player a really good player. I consider myself a really good player. So I was like, okay. I never play good stuff, so it makes sense for me to play, because I should be able to play like correctly, since I consider myself a good player. So that also worked out. So I'm really, let's say like, I really enjoy playing a lot of different teams, but I definitely prefer Hyper Offensive.
Yeah. And I still remember when you used Barrascuda to win one of the international challenges last year. That was such a cool team. Okay, so you're currently number 3 in Europe. That is no mean feat. And you're more or less guaranteed day 2 at Worlds?
Yeah, exactly. I would say, like, since I'm already at like 690 CP, most likely the day 2 gonna be around like 550 and 600. So I should be like already locked in by a lot at the moment. So, but yeah, I'm still gonna be playing this tournament. So of course to prepare awards, since my goal for the season was to win at least one major, and I mean, of course, like the best possible scenario is to win Worlds, but I would be also fine by just winning like Malmö regional or NAC, of course, or Touring regional, of course.
Yeah. Well, really exciting, and your season is already going so well. We all wish you all the best of luck. And to round out the interview, first of all, what's your favorite Pokemon, Marco?
My favorite Pokemon is probably Serperior, but only because I started playing actually like just Pokemon with the Black and White 2. Like before Black and White 2, actually I didn't even know that like Pokemon was like that, because my first games was like Mystery Dungeon, so I didn't know that like Pokemon was like with gyms and all that. Like I knew that like the anime was like that, but I didn't know that like the game was supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
So in my first game, which was kind of late because during Black and White 2 I was in 5th grade, so I was already 10, and people usually start at like 6.
Sure.
But yeah, so like that was my first game, and then Serperior just become my favorite Pokemon since it was my star, like the final evolution, of course.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, Serperior is a really cool Pokemon. And I know that Jamie Boyd will be pleased to hear that that's his favorite Pokemon as well. And finally, any shout outs you want to give, Marco?
Shout out definitely to my mom that always supports me. Also my brother, since even if people might not think that way, he also like gives me like some input on the team, since he also like used it for European International Championship. And then also like all my friends of El Server, and like Fede Campo, Pepe, Chere, and all these guys that have been competing also in Malmö and for the day 2 this season. They do it greatly.
Well, there you go. It takes a whole team of people to raise a player as good as Marco Silva. Thank you so much, Marco. That was really fascinating insight into your process and to how you're feeling about today's tournament. We're going to cut to a very short break, but we'll be back with a very exciting round 4, so don't go anywhere.